I've always struggled with words. Either I speak too fast, blurting things out before I even process them, or I hesitate, overthinking things to the point where I don't say anything at all. I think that's more my camp, where I just try not to speak all the time. And recently, I've been listening to the song by JPEG Mafia, and this is one of its first lyrics. Lately, every word that comes out my mouth gets fired straight from the hip. Man, that sounds like some kind of scholar. I might be looking a bit too deep into this, but it made me think, is everything I actually say meant to be said? You know, that question takes me all the way back to my childhood, to when Pokemon Ruby was the first thing that actually taught me how to read. And in a weird way, it taught me something about speaking with intention. You see, when I was little, I barely spoke. For the first 5 years of my life, my mom said my mouth was just full of drool and gibberish. But that changed when I got a Game Boy Advance and a thrifted copy of Pokemon Ruby. I was completely hooked. The adventure, the world, the creatures. But what really stuck with me were the words. For example, the word paralysis. That's a very strange word to even see. And look at that combination of letters, right? It's a stark contrast from like cat or dog when you're a 6-year-old, right? I didn't understand what it was until I saw my Pokemon surrounded by crackling electricity, unable to move. And there's another word, infatuation. A big word for a 6-year-old, but easy to grasp when I saw hearts floating around my Pokemon's head. And the word confusion. Ducks spinning above my Pokemon? Yeah, that made sense pretty quickly. I was learning through context, through symbols, and through experience. I thought it was amazing. I was just so curious and I wanted to consume more. And I thought the text speed was a bit too slow, so I found the settings menu and cranked the text speed up to fast. Suddenly, I was blazing through dialogue, absorbing words at lightning speed. I felt like I was leveling up my brain. But in real life, I started speaking just as fast, blurting things out before I had really processed them. My brain was moving way ahead of my mouth, and I found myself stumbling, rambling, or saying things I didn't really mean. It was like I had permanently switched my speech settings to fast mode. And when you speak too fast, without intention, you run the risk of being misunderstood. On the flip side, when I overthought my words too much, I would freeze up completely. And I remember this being a huge problem for me as I grew older because I wondered if I was just running in circles, if I was just saying the same things over and over again without a point. I would let people who were much more, good at talking kind of run circles around me, and I would just end up not talking at all. Somewhere between these two extremes, rushing and hesitating, I had to find balance. So years later in university, I learned about this concept called semiotics, which is the study of how signs and symbols create meaning. But honestly, Pokemon had already been teaching me this all along. Hearts is love. Electricity, it's paralysis. 2 dots and an arch, that's a face, a feeling. I mean, sure, you can add more detail to this face. You can add hair, you can add a beard or a mustache. But the bottom line is, having 2 dots and an arch, everyone can understand that that is a face looking right at you. And sometimes the clearest message isn't about saying more. It's about saying the right thing. That's when I started making an effort to slow down. Before I spoke, before I wrote, before I acted, I started asking myself, what am I actually trying to say? Can I make this simpler? What's a 2 dots and an arch version of this? Because intentional words, whether in a conversation, a script, or even a simple act of kindness, they have more power than 1,000 rushed ones. If you ever felt like you overthink your words, like you hesitate too much, let me tell you, that's not always a bad thing. Yes, we live in a world that tells us to act fast, to just do it, to keep grinding. And yes, sometimes hesitation can be fear. But sometimes hesitation is just you making sure that your words matter. So slowing down your cadence, thinking about what you have to say. So next time you feel stuck, take a breath. Give yourself 5 seconds. You don't have to rush. Your words will come when they're ready. And when they do, they'll actually mean something. Shout out to Pokemon Ruby for being my first teacher in all this. And shout out to JPEG Mafia for somehow tying it all together with a single lyric. Anyway, that's my deep dive for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.